Hello, Noel James. Thanks very much for coming along to Dolly Chicken Comedy today.
That's okay, Anita. Thank you for inviting me.
You're very welcome. We're really excited because you're headlining Fun at the Flute on Thursday, the 17th of May. And so we really just wanted to know what sort of things can we expect?
Well, probably not quite as much as before because I'm getting paid 20 quid less, but you definitely get a whole load of probably a lot of new jokes that I've been working on. Depends how the audience is on the night, you know. If they're flowing and they're malleable, I'll be throwing out all sorts of jokes left, right, and centre, you know. Like, just stuff that, because I talk about my problems. Like, people ask me if I've got phobias. I say sometimes I have 5 beers, 6 beers, you know. Um, People ask me if I did dry January. I say I did dry January. I did Movember. I'm just looking forward to septicemia, to be honest with you. Things like that. I like to talk about all sorts of things. I'll be packing them in and throwing them. And the last time I played the Fun at the Flute, it was fun. It was fun.
It was great fun,
Yeah.
and that's why basically, honestly, the audience has been nagging me. Well, they didn't need to nag because I think you're brilliant, obviously, and we had such a good time at the Flute
Obviously,
last
it's
time.
good to know that it's
obviously.
obvious.
And people, since they've seen your face on the poster, as I said earlier, have been really excited, and yeah, tickets are flying out. So yeah, we're expecting a big audience. Still tickets available. Or buy on the door. So
I don't think. I think it's good that you think I'm brilliant and all that. I think still I could go to some places and people would think I'm crap. I think it's a lot of comedies in the eye of the beholder and the perception. But because your club is set up so well, I think it lends itself then to whoever the comedian is. They got the best shot at conveying what it is that's funny about them.
Well, that's nice. So you've got a very
I worked with a comedian last week, a Buddhist comedian, and it was amazing. He was so far advanced along the path of enlightenment that he delivered all his material through his third eye, and the microphone was up there with him. Of course, it was observational material. And I think that that's the sort of thing I'm aiming for, that kind of different twist.
different twist.
Yeah.
Well, I was going to ask you how you describe what you do, because I suppose when I've been telling people about you, I've said things like you are it's really, I would say, it's incredibly witty, it's really fast paced, and you really have to listen carefully because the next joke just follows on, and it's all high quality stuff. God knows I remember it all. But so, how would you describe it so that people who don't know you would think, oh God, we can't miss that?
Well, people say to me, you have to listen to it. So they're the audience members who say that, so I believe them. When I'm up there, I just try and have fun. And I think that can spread then to the audience. I think some people have also recently said to me, sometimes it feels like I'm a teacher telling off students. Because I think more and more and more I've started interacting with the audience, not just standing back and talking and not just delivering material. I think that the trouble is with my style of material, if you'll always get some people who won't like what you do. It doesn't matter who you are, whether you're Eddie Izzard, Lee Evans, whether you're Michael McIntyre. The only universal type of comedy is mime comedy, because that's the only type of comedy that can then penetrate all language barriers. Mm-hmm. So, you're always fixed in a certain thing that you do. Now, I'm not sure how I would describe my type of comedy. Yes, it's silly. Yes, it's surreal, but it's not really surreal because it has a certain logic to it. But I think a lot of people would say I do one-liners, and I walked out of a gig recently which went okay, but I was very tired and I'd driven like 100, 200 miles to get to the gig, and I'd been up since 6 a.m. and the gig went okay, and then on the way out I heard some punter saying, oh, I don't like one-liners. And the thing was, I was slightly disappointed with that because I knew that had I not been so tired, I would have been able to have more energy and perhaps not just deliver my jokes but also involve members of the audience, because it's not just one-liners then, it's more like there's interaction and there's spontaneity, and really audiences can't help but really get into that because they can see it's happening there and then, and it's unique and it's never going to happen again. So, for example, I did a gig last week and I say I used to be a teacher, and I ask members of the audience, what do you think I used to teach? And one guy at the front who was trying to be awkward said Japanese. And I thought about it and I took a drink and I looked at him and I said, there's no need to be sarky. And what happened there was everybody really loved that, you know. Yeah. I've got very good powers of recall, and I remembered a comedian called Paul Ramon, who used to do gigs in London in the late 80s, and he used to do a joke about there's no need to be sarky, and that just came to me, and it was the perfect thing. So, you know, when I'm on form, it's not just standing there doing one-liners. And even if I did just that, I think one-liners is a kind of not an accurate description. You know, one-line. I think Tim Vine does one-liners. Yeah. I do one-liners. I do two-liners. You know?
I don't think I wouldn't have said you were in the same sort of genre as Tim Vine. So, I mean,
that's interesting you say that, because if you actually look online, you will find that Tim Vine cites me as an influence.
Does he?
Yeah. Because he saw me somewhere in London many years ago before he started comedy, and in particular one of my jokes, which was a very silly joke, and the joke was, I saw a man who was going bald. He was going, bald, bald! And Tim Vine said that gave him license, it realised, to be daft.
Yeah.
And he's gone on to become a brilliant jokesmith and mainly short one-liners, although he does music and everything like that, and he does prop gags as well. But the thing is, the Thing is a member of the Fantastic Four, and I would like to think that I can do different types of jokes, and sometimes they're not just wordplay. A lot of people say I do puns, and I hate the word pun. I love the concept of wordplay, and I don't mind the word pun. In fact, some people say that the word pun comes from the Welsh language, because there's two words in Welsh, pa un, which means which one, and pa un is often abbreviated to P apostrophe un, un, peen, which would be really amazing if that was true, that that's where the word pun came from, with what myself being from Wales and being Welsh. And I think that I love wordplay, but sometimes I'll come up with different ideas. The other day, it dawned on me, you know, what's the name of that company that do those sweets in the shape of Coca-Cola bottles? Hasbro, you know.
Haribo.
Haribo.
Yeah.
They've come up with a different variety of those Coca-Cola sweets. They're called the festival variety, and you get the little sweets in the shape of a cola bottle, but they're yellow. They're festival cola ones, and they taste like urine. And I don't know. I have never tried that yet, but that's not a pun.
No, you just mentioned that you're a professional comedian. So when did you start as a comedian? When did you go professional? Because you said you were a teacher originally. So how did that process happen?
Well, I've done a little teaching. I think what happened was, well, it depends if you want to know the true longer sad version, or you want to just know a resume.
Shall we have a resume? Is that all right with you?
Yeah.
I don't want to be.
If you'd like to hear a summary,
I could always hear the full version off camera.
Okay.
When I take you to the station.
Yes. Okay. See that? I did the classic. No, I didn't. What? Shut it. Basically, I went to university to Manchester to study physics because my parents and teachers never really understood, you know, or I never really understood that I wanted to do something artistic. I just had to go and study something to give me a secure qualification. So I got a degree in physics while I was in Manchester. Ultimately found it boring and quite traumatic for personal reasons. And then at the end, I heard drama students talking about the comedy scene in London. This was the end of the 80s, and it awoke something in me, because I remembered growing up, there were so many things I loved about comedy growing up. There were so many brilliant sitcoms on television. I loved comedy. I was also into films generally. I loved horror films, but that then led on to scripts and comedy. Monty Python's Life of Brian, I remember reading the script form when growing up in Swansea, because it was banned in Swansea, so you couldn't go and see it in the cinema.
And did you quote it? I remember when I was at school, people quoting Life of Brian.
No, I wasn't one of them. I wasn't the geeky Monty Python guy. I met people like that in university, but I wasn't one of them. In fact, I went to see Spamalot a few years ago, and I hated it because it seemed to me that the actors were suddenly adopting those geeky voices that only the real 6 Monty Python members could really do properly. But anyway, so then I went to London after university. I went specifically to pursue comedy. My father was against it, but I thought, I'm going to do comedy. I lived with my brother for a while because he lived in London, and I got a job. The only job I could get to start with was a temping job with British Telecom as a filing clerk. I worked in the office, and everybody left at 5 o'clock, and I'd get on the phones and phone comedy clubs and book. And I knew nothing about the comedy scene. I didn't know any of the famous people in London, and it was mainly confined to London at the time. So people like Arthur Smith and Jerry Sadowitz and others were the big names, and I didn't know anything about them. I didn't really know how to write jokes, but I knew from the fact that I'd written sketches in school that I was a bit of a class clown, and that a guy I knew in university, he and I wrote comedy poetry together. Although it has to be said, for those 3 years in university, I kind of dried up because I used to write poetry as well. But basically, when I got to London, it was my my sort of christening, baptism of fire by phoning up clubs, going to do unpaid spots. But first going to watch comedians in little cabaret clubs like the Meccano Club in Islington. And then, like a lot of comedians starting out, you see other people doing it and you think to yourself, well, I can do as well as that, or I can do better than that. But you know you can do at least as well as the people you're watching. And that keeps you going. And then I wrote a few things, what I thought it was very important to write my own stuff right from the beginning. There's no point just being a channel for old jokes or other people's jokes. And I just wrote what I thought was funny. And then through just process of going back on stage countless times, doing 5 minutes and 10 minutes, you start to learn certain skills then. And I also like the idea of acting and performing generally. And I think that that's where it all, it was kind of me wanting to do it, but it was also circumstances had contrived. And then after a year of clerical work, I did do teacher training in London because it was just something else to do to fill time for a year, and also got a grant for it. So, and also it was at least I can say, although I did a physics degree, it hasn't been a total waste of time because I now have a teaching qualification, and if times get desperate, which they still might, I can always fall back.
You can always teach, and it's one of the jobs.
Well,
one of the most,
I could do supply, or know.
Yeah, but it's one of the basically we need physics teachers in Wales, so there are. That's my other job there, promoting science. And maybe we'll get a science comedy set from you.
I can certainly, yeah.
We said that, didn't we?
Yeah.
I certainly would science.
Include a lot of science jokes in front of the fruit, because my professor at physics college also introduced me to comedy. I don't know if you know Professor Pete Dantic. No. He was the first scientist to split the hair. And I owe him a great debt, thanks to the government policy on grants. But yeah, my great grandfather invented Faraday cage fighting. I'd like to say he was the best in his field, but seeing as there are no fails in Faraday cages, and seeing as nobody understands this joke, sorry, you carry on.
Shall we carry on? Oh no, right. So
yeah, I'd love to do a science set.
Shall we do a science set? No, not this time though. We're doing the normal one this time, and then we'll have you back to do some science with some other people who can do.
Don't you work for science people or something?
Well, my business is about science, so yeah.
Of course, that's right.
Course.
Yeah, I remember now. Yeah. How's your business going?
It's not about me. So.
She's like that, I know.
So what's the next things for you coming, apart from the 17th of May? I did think that when I watched Britain's Got Talent this week that I spied someone who looked very like you doing a Britain's Got Talent spot, and I was beyond excited.
An actual spot?
A spot. Well, I don't know, I just saw you on stage. So yeah.
Well, people have told me, I've been sent messages on Facebook saying they saw a teaser at the end of the show with somebody who was wearing a guitar case on their head that looked like an elephant. It could well have been me, but I'm afraid I can't say much about that. You say no
more? Oh, okay. Well, we're excited about finding out at some point.
I'm desperate to find out who that man is, and you never know. He might actually be on the full set at some point soon. You never know.
Well, we'll look out for that then. And
I did do a show involving Birds of Prey. That was Britain's Got Talons. And that went quite well, except I ended up eating a peregrine falcon.
And what's on the card?
No, hawking's one of my hobbies, rather than falconry.
Oh, okay. What's the difference?
That's hawking. No, you don't know that, would you? You got. She doesn't know it. I know. I told her.
Oh, I'm sorry. I've ruined your
That's okay.
And what else is happening? What in the next few months for you? I know you're running a comedy club down in Swansea.
I'm also doing. I am organising a course in stand-up comedy, which will be starting
fantastic.
in mid-May. It'll be 2 hours on a Wednesday night for 4 weeks. But it's actually, technically, it's for over 50s.
Right.
Because I saw Age Cymru, which is a charity for older people, a few months ago they were advertising you could get a grant if you came up with a really creative idea. And at the time, when I looked at this period of the year in my diary, I didn't have anything in. I thought, well, I'm going to, you use different strands of what you can do. And it's amazing. This year has been quite good. I've ended up with quite a lot of gigs. And I thought, to be honest, I had a really rough year last year, mentally and stuff, and one of the reasons was I was getting completely disappointed and let down by people on the comedy scene who offer you gigs and promise you gigs and tell you to your face they're gonna book you, and they don't. And I got really depressed last year. And then you don't know really if people still think you're any good and if they're gonna book you. So you see different things. Like I saw this opportunity for maybe getting some money to do a course, and I managed to get it. So. And that'll be something good. It'll be good fun for the people on it, because they'll have to bring some ideas. They can't just come along and expect me to tell them how to write jokes. They'll have to come along with ideas, and I'll facilitate them into, getting on stage, how to deliver it, how to perform it to the, and week after week then they'll get more confident. Fantastic. So I'll be doing that, and I'll be doing more gigs, possibly going to Edinburgh for a couple of weeks. To the Edinburgh Fringe, I mean, not just to Edinburgh to enjoy myself. I would never do that.
Oh, excellent. So,
yeah.
Do you need more wine?
No, I'm just trying to stop myself from drinking it.
No, go ahead.
Okay.
Well, I think all it remains for me to say is that we are really excited to welcome you back to Fun at the Flute on Thursday the 17th of May. Can't wait to see what you're going to do.
Well, as we said before, if you've got it, flaunt it.
Do you know, you did say that to me before, and I wasn't really listening properly, was I?
Are you sure you're actually going to enjoy my set?
I love your set. No,
there's so many of my jokes in this interview that you don't seem to have understood.
I have understood.
Okay.
Do you know the biggest problem I have when I interview people is that I'm very aware that I talk too much, and I sort of say yes and agree and laugh.
Do you know what though?
I would like to feel. So, no, not at all. I would like to feel that people are listening to you rather than me.
Okay, I'll tell you what, Anita. I think your comparing last time was really good, because if you remember, we had that little exchange with
it. We did, because you said something about my dress.
And that really got me into, like, the beginning of the set was kind of really high energy.
You were on the front foot, weren't you? Were you absolutely on the front foot?
But what I think is the shame about comedy, I think if I could get like more famous and higher profile, I think it'd be brilliant. But I have to say, I do admire Woody Allen, although I know he's a bit weird and all that, but Woody Allen has always challenged himself, and actually, even though he could probably have done like funny film after funny film after well, he could have just done stand-up comedy for years and years, but he didn't. He went into filmmaking, and then for some reason he did serious films. Well, I think my problem is I'm a bit lazy. If I manage to get really, really successful one day as a comedian, I don't want to end up like Tommy Cooper, who was like booked 3-5 years in advance and just kept going, gigging and gigging. It'd be nice to think, I could just perhaps just deviate away from that as well, because I think it'd be good to be able to write a script or a film script.
Do it then.
Come
on, you could do that. Definitely, why not?
But when you get comfortable doing comedy gigs, because
do you really? All that travel, really? Do you? Oh my word, all that travelling.
Yeah, because you feel like a hero.
I suppose, I suppose at the end of it, you've you're the headliner and you're brilliant. So.
Well, you don't have to be the headliner anymore. You can go on first. I can go on first, and I'll always do my best.
Yeah.
Because in comedy, nobody can, like in other disciplines, like in running, if you are the pacemaker.
I love the way you look around our house there as if you saw something to do with running, and there's
Well, I just saw that
all.
sofa.
Yeah.
And I thought, I'd like to eat that sofa because it's comfort eating, isn't it?
Yeah.
But if you're a runner and you're the pacemaker, you've got to be the pacemaker. You can't win it. They criticise you if you win it. It's like in comedy, if you go on first, you do your best. You don't warm. Yeah, you do warm up for the following acts, but you do your best. It doesn't really matter. I don't care. I go on first, or go on in the middle, or go on last. But you still feel it's you've done your best, and people and you enjoy. You enjoy it, and then it spreads, and other people enjoy it. Yeah. I think I've learnt that you've got to enjoy it, and how you get to that point is another question. But if you can enjoy it, that's half the battle with comedy, because even if they think you're crap, you know that it wasn't pretentious and it wasn't just an artificial thing. You know it was real.
Yeah, it came from.
And I remember Bill Hicks, who was one of my favourite stand-up comedians, really said, I don't know quite what he meant, and I still don't, but he said, there's an interview with him where he says that all comedians go through something and they change at some point, and he says something happens to them. I've always been intrigued by what he meant by that, but I think he's right. I think something happens to you the more you do and pursue comedy and develop as a performer.
Great. Oh, well, thanks for that. I mean, it's really nice to hear your perspective on comedy, because obviously you've been doing it a long time, and since the late 80s. I was seeing comedy in London in the late 80s, early 90s, and so it was a great time.
Perhaps you saw me then.
Well, I didn't. I don't remember you, and I would have remembered you. I saw people like Joe Brand, and I saw Eddie Izzard as well.
Who else do you remember?
Well, Eddie Izzard, obviously. But
were you
my
watching it in
was,
small little cabaret clubs?
Yeah, pubs and things. But Logan
There's
Murray
so
was
many
my
people.
favourite.
Logan Murray, I did. He's brilliant. I remember lots of people who are brilliant who've since dropped out. And that's the other thing where people say to me,
I saw Mark Lamar as well. I thought he was great.
Yeah, he was okay. Yeah,
I really liked him.
Okay.
But people wouldn't know he was a comedian, given that he stopped doing it so long ago. But I thought he was good when he was doing it. So anyway, I'm conscious that we should finish at some point. But thanks so much for coming over.
That's okay.
And
thank you, Anita.
Oh, you're welcome. And really, really looking forward to the Thursday, the 17th of May,
Brilliant.
for more fantastic stuff from Noel James.
Thank you very much. Hope to see you on the 17th. Have a good time. Until then.